Go.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on embracing telehealth, how to use the CELF-5 via Q Global. My name is Richard Nash and I'm the Customer Success Manager for Pearson Clinical UK, and I'll be hosting today's webinar along with Angela Kinsella, Pearson's consultant speech therapist, who will introduce herself in one moment. And just before we begin, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Firstly, please ensure that all other applications on your laptop or tablet are closed. This will enable the webinar platform to perform at its best, allowing you a better webinar viewing experience. Since we have a large number of attendees today, you will be muted for the duration of this presentation, but please note you'll still be able to communicate with us and ask questions via the question and answer panel, which should be found at the bottom of your webinar panel on the screen. Please do type your questions in here at any point during the webinar, and we'll get to these during the Q&A session at the end. On the off chance that you do experience any technical difficulties, please simply log out, close applications and log back in again to the webinar using the same link. If this doesn't work, try logging out of your machine and reboot and log back in again, and hopefully that will fix the problem. Just to advise that handouts and supporting documentation will be available and will be sent to you after this webinar within the next few days. Also, material will be added to the CELF-5 page as well on our website. And a final note, this webinar will be recorded and will be accessible again to rewatch later. So with that, I'm Angela, who will introduce herself and take you through the first portion of this webinar.
Thank you, Richard. Huge welcome to everyone on embracing telehealth, how to use the CELF-5 or the CELF-5, as I call it. So I'll attempt to remember to call it the CELF, but if I say CELF, please forgive me, and I'll use those words interchangeably. And what we're going to be doing today is we've had lots and lots of questions around how do we actually set up our telehealth environment, access the CELF-5 via Q Global and continue to do our assessments as if we were in clinic or in person. I'm Angela, I'm the consultant speech language therapist with Pearson Clinical, and if you've got any comments or questions or anything at all about setting up, administering, interpreting any of the CELF products, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is there. I'm very excited to be co-hosting today's webinar with Richard, so thank you. Today's agenda, it is jam-packed and we will probably use the full hour, including our Q&A, so thank you for joining us. We're going to be looking very importantly at telepractice considerations, because before we can complete the standardised assessment using the CELF-5, we have to be sure that we've set up our telehealth environment as best as possible to mimic that in-person session. Richard and I are going to be showing you how to access the free Q Global resources that Pearson Clinical's made available during these times. We're also going to be showing you how to score and report using Q Global. And then, of course, we hope that we've got enough time for Q&A, so get ready with your questions. Most of us know what this is, but bear with me as we set the scene. It's really important. What is telehealth? Remembering it's also known as telemedicine or telepractice, and Richard and I will tend to use those terms interchangeably, but they really all mean the same thing, which is this. The International Organization for Standardization defines telehealth as the use of telecommunication techniques for the purpose of providing telemedicine, medical education and health education over a distance. And this is really, really important to us as clinicians, because we do want to continue that continuity of care when we're in this lockdown period. So it's about transmitting voice, data, images and information rather than moving our patients or our clients around or us moving to them. It encompasses diagnosis, treatment, preventative and curative aspects of healthcare services, and typically involves care recipients, their providers, their educators in the provision of these services. So in essence, telehealth allows for the continuity of care when in-person sessions are not practical or feasible, as we've experienced. So we don't want to disrupt those services. But very important is to make sure that we offer successful telehealth speech language therapy services and ongoing services. Our associations have a wealth of information available to us. So of course, the Royal College for Speech Language Therapists updates their website almost daily. So we recommend that you do keep an eye on that. Another interesting resource that we wanted to make sure you knew about was the Blueprint for Tele-Rehabilitation Guidelines, which comes from the International Journal of Tele-Rehab. And then, of course, our very own website, Pearson Clinical, has a whole page dedicated to telehealth resources. Lots of information. Do take the time to dig through it, look through it. It links back to our parent company website, in the US, and our senior product managers, who are SLTs themselves, have put lots and lots of time and energy into updating this. So please feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. This is really important for us as clinicians, and I know lots of you have asked us this question: how do I know if telehealth is right for my client? Because, you know, just with any other standardized assessment, be it in person, in clinic, telehealth, we want to make sure that the environment is right and the patient or the client can actually access that. So these are the 5 factors to consider when exploring telehealth. And if any of you want more information or the research, again, feel free to reach out to us. But it is shared on our website. But again, if you can't find anything specific, do come to us and we can help you in the right direction to find that information. So 5 important things: the audiovisual environment, which is obvious. Us as the examiner, what factors do we need to consider? What do we need to consider for the student that we're assessing? What materials do we need? And what other things do we have to be mindful of? Now, a lot of the stuff is, I'll be stating the obvious, but it's really important in these unprecedented times for us to be mindful of exactly the steps that we need to consider, especially to mimic that in-person or in-clinic environment as closely as possible. Why? Because we want to continue to administer the CELF-5 in a standardized way so that the results continue to be reliable and valid. And that, of course, we know is clinically important because we need accurate baseline measures so we can provide that targeted therapy and intervention. So considering the audiovisual environment, it's critical, and I know this is obvious, that both of you and the client or the student have a computer and a webcam, and where possible, a high definition webcam. Speaker and headset is really important with a microphone. Reliable internet, there's a reason why I've bolded that. It is critical that you have good bandwidth, that you don't have patchy parts during your assessment, that it drops in, drops out. We've all experienced those patchy, laggy video conferences. It is excruciating. Now we want to add assessment to that equation. It makes it really unbearable and really unpleasant for everyone, including yourself. So my strong recommendation is, where you can, postpone an assessment till in person or in clinic is possible. And who knows when that's going to be, but if it is possible to postpone it if and when you don't have reliable internet. I would just give up. I wouldn't even try and persist if you've got unreliable internet. Been there, done that, not worth it. We all will require, well, no, that's not true. Some clients may require on-site facilitator, especially our high needs patients or our little ones. Now, during these times in lockdown, most of us are going to have a parent or a caregiver or older sibling being an untrained facilitator. At Pearson, our senior product managers in the US have gone to great lengths to put together the use of facilitators in a remote test administration. Now, as Richard said, we will make these PDFs available and you will have direct links to these documents. Again, we'll put all this on our website, but if you can't find it, simply reach out to us. It is worth reading through that document. It goes through a whole lot of tasks in detail about when and when not to use a facilitator and when it's needed. Now, be mindful that during standardized assessment, the role of the facilitator is simply to manage the technology, right? And to reduce the distractions. So the parent or the caregiver or the older sibling's role is to make sure the cat doesn't come in, or the younger siblings don't come in, or the postman doesn't ring the doorbell, whatever the case is. That is the role of the facilitator. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Other things to consider with audiovisual environment. Why do we recommend headsets or headphones? It reduces the feedback, is the first thing, between you and the patient or the client or your student, or however you refer to the person you're assessing. But also it blocks out any environmental distractions. Remember, we want to keep this as standardized as possible, and these are the things that we need to do. It's also important to use a platform that allows both the client to see your face as well as the stimuli. I will show you an image of what that looks like, and we'll talk more about platforms in the next few slides. The other thing I deliberately put on the next slide to remind us of, and so that it is at the forefront of your mind, is with an on-site facilitator, remind those cheeky parents that they are not there to answer the questions, right? Their role is simply to minimize those distractions and to make sure the child is focused. And where possible, we want to invite mum and dad or older brother or sister out of the room while you're doing the assessing, just as you would during an in-person in-clinic assessment. So all the same rules apply, okay? We've just got to manage our technology as well. In terms of managing technology, the examining screen size has to be a minimum of 9.7 inches, which is 25 centimeters, and that's when you measure it diagonally from the top left-hand corner of your screen right down to the bottom right-hand corner. So that means no smartphones, no iPhones, I don't care how big the iPhones are, and no iPad minis. It's really important that we stick to that. You have to be mindful that you're in a well-lit room, minimize glare, minimize distraction, glare and distractions, visual distractions, as you would in an in-person assessment. Be sure you can fully see the client's face throughout the session, even when the stimuli is presented, and I've got an image of that coming up. As Richard did suggest in the introduction, when we are online, we want to close all background applications. We don't want notifications popping up. We don't want your friends' Facebook messages coming through. Okay, not only is that not professional, but it's distracting you. And like as an in-person assessment, you wouldn't have your iPhone and be scrolling through it. So again, same rules apply. Remember to test technology at the start of each session. Even Richard and I and Tam, who's on the line as well, we logged in half an hour before, tested things. It's really, really important. Blur your background, make sure you've got no interesting, I don't know, laundry in the background. Been there, done that as well. You don't want any client data in the background. So these are all things we have to be mindful of. Have a backup plan. Technology is going to fail, right? And if it does, what are we going to do? We're going to reboot, we're going to restart, we're going to ring each other. So make sure you've got each other's phone numbers. Lots of active listening. Again, as speeches, this is obvious, but just a reminder, because we're online and we're not in person, visual acknowledgement is even more important because there might be a slight audio delay, or delay in the audio is a better way of saying that. So lots of visual reinforcement just to keep everyone engaged. This is the example of where we can see the patient's face as well as the stimuli that we're sharing on the screen, and this is really important. All right. Choosing the technology platform. Again, we get so many questions about what we recommend. Again, like with your physical space, only you know what works best for you, your type of patients that you're seeing, your budget, etc. All that needs to be taken into account. So as Pearson employees, we really don't know, and we're not best placed to make that recommendation. However, what we can do is make sure that the platform you're choosing offers picture-in-picture display, end-to-end encryption, which means that it's really secure. The data is not going to be easily leaked or hacked. You have to have the ability to share your screen. That is critical. So it really is up to you to do your due diligence, remembering, as we know, that we are responsible as clinicians for the security and protection of our client data. consider whether that platform is customized for telehealth, and a lot of these clinical platforms are, and they seem to have boosted their availability and their extra functionality during these times. Like we've all had to, come to the party and just roll with it and be a little bit innovative. And it's nice to see that the telehealth platforms have done the same. Things that I've personally used as a clinician, because I can tell you, I had to learn very quickly how to adapt, as did everyone out there, peers, colleagues. So this is what other clinicians have shared with me. Microsoft Teams works really well. Google Hangouts, Zoom is a very popular one. And there is something called Health Direct, but I'm sure you know of lots. So let us know if there's anything that you would recommend to your peers here in the UK. Things to consider as the clinician: we want to practice the use of technology with a friend or a family member, and I really, really recommend that. Access the CELF-5 Q Global Stimulus book, set it up, test your own kids. My kids are so sick of being tested, but it's really important that we get that ready and that you're comfortable with the technology before you invite the client to the assessment. We've got to practice the mechanics, the workflow of every item in the entire test using the selected teleconference platform so that you can be familiar with the administration procedures. So like you would prepare for an in-person assessment, this is no different. Remember that you've got to practice that the child has control of the mouse. Can they navigate the mouse? Do you know what functionality that platform has? For example, can you annotate? Can you ask questions? Whatever the case is, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later on when we look at capturing the students' responses, especially on the CELF-5. Folks, in the middle of the slide, standardised procedures in big, bold green follow the administration procedures of traditional administration. That is of paramount importance, and I can't stress it enough. A good example of what is not standardized procedure is if you tell the parents the answers and they tell you as the speech language therapist if the child was correct or not. So we would never do that. And I share this because speeches are very creative, and lots of the clinicians have come to me and suggested some lovely alternative ways to be innovative during the COVID time, which is great. But it doesn't work for standardized assessments. Why? Simply because we're going to invalidate the results. And we as clinicians want the best performance from the child on the day, so we do have to stick to those standardized procedures. Again, a reminder is the on-site facilitator's role in the session is to manage the audio-visual and technology needs and materials. Okay, they really do need to know what their role is. And we've got a document that we've prepared here at Pearson that we can send out beforehand. Again, this links, well, once you have your PDF notes, it'll link directly to a Word document that you can send to the families, to the children, to the students, to the facilitators, to make sure they know how to prepare for this assessment. Before initiating the actual administration, like we would with an in-person assessment, we want the little person or the student or whoever we're working with to be prepared, well rested, ready to know what they're up for. Sometimes CELF-5 can take up to 2 hours. They need to be prepared for that. They need to have scheduled breaks in. We want to make sure that it's, around 10, 11 a.m. in the morning is an optimum time to test someone. Why? Because they're not too tired, they're not about to fall asleep on us, their energy levels are at a good level. So these are things to take into account. And again, we want to remind the facilitator of their role. The other factor to consider is what materials we need. So here at Pearson, we're lucky that Pearson has made available a whole lot of Q Global resources for us. We've relaxed the rules around copyright. What that means is we've given everyone the ability to screen share our assessments during these COVID times. What it also means, though, is that we're not giving you permission to photocopy any record forms. You are not allowed to photocopy any response booklets. You're not allowed to record the actual session. So the only rules that we relaxed is that you can screen share our assessments on any telehealth or digital platform. So pre-COVID times, that was a no-no because a lot of the platforms weren't encoded strictly like as per our standards and recommendations. But it is really useful that Q Global has made this available during this time, and we'll continue to do this post-COVID times as well. But I would like everyone to be mindful of the copyright is still very much paramount to the record forms and response booklets. So what do we do with the response booklets? Thinking specifically of the Wyatt, sorry, not the Wyatt, the CELF-5 response booklets, the reading and writing supplements, if you are doing the reading and writing subtests. And this is all written in your notes in front of you, but I'll just talk through it briefly. So what we want to do is we want to mail out, so via snail mail, we want to pop the response booklet in the mail, post it to the family. Of course, you need to allow for extra time because there are some postage delays for obvious reasons. And once you've scheduled that assessment, that the family member opens, so the untrained facilitator will open the assessment, the envelope with the response booklet in it on camera so that you can see that comes out, because we don't want families practicing anything beforehand. And then post the assessment, once the child has completed their responses on the response booklet, they insert it on camera back into the envelope and send it back to you, because you would have sent a self-addressed envelope. And there are two reasons for that. A, we want to maintain the integrity of the test, of course, but we really don't want parents hanging onto raw data, because can you imagine? They will go through that data ad nauseum, trying to work out what the child did or didn't do, and that's not their role, right? That's your role as a clinician and to interpret it. So that's the way we get around response booklets. Record forms remain your property, in your care at all times. That record form never ever goes to a family member. And I'll talk more about how we capture that, the students' responses in a moment. Other things to consider, I think I've gone through all of this as I was talking through it, but it's nice to have it summarised in front of you, which is why we've kept it there for you when you get your handouts. You can refer back to these as additional resource. The only thing I'd mention there is the fourth bullet point. As you would in an in-person or in-clinic assessment, if the client is new to your practice, spend some time rapport building, and that's no different via telehealth. Remind the patient to be open and honest and transparent if things aren't making sense or they can't hear you or something's failed in terms of technology, just to let you know. And make sure you have each other's phone numbers. Non-verbal communication is just as important, if not more, when conducting the sessions over telehealth. Make sure they can see you. As I've said a number of times, it's really important. Facial expression is important. Using gestures is even more important during this time. And we want to monitor their non-verbal communication. So again, as you would do in an in-person assessment, if the child is distracted, fidgeting, really not paying attention, they're not engaged in that, right? And it's almost more difficult to engage them in the telehealth environment, which is why it's important to set it up correctly, have good bandwidth, get them engaged so that they are really engaged during the process so we can get the best possible performance out of them. Now, reporting is really important. And we want to state in the report exactly what we've done, right? As we would do in any in-person assessment. If we've modified anything, if we've repeated something, it's really important that we document it. And there I've given you a couple of examples, draft examples of what you can pop in your report. Very briefly, I'll go through it. So something like the CELF was administered via remote telepractice using digital stimulus materials on Pearson Clinical's Q Global system. And a facilitator, I would even go so far as to say a non-trained facilitator, monitored the administration on site using a printed response booklet during the live video connection using the Zoom platform, whatever it is. Make a clinical judgment as to whether you think the results from your telehealth administration are reliable and valid, and then you document exactly what you've seen. And again, I've given you an example of what that may look like. And again, folks, no different from your face-to-face session or your in-person session. The point is document exactly what you've done, because we want to get the best possible performance out of the student, and we want to highlight exactly what their strengths are, the areas for development, and if we think anything is not quite valid or reliable, we need to be able to rationalize that, state that, so that we can provide targeted therapy. And the other thing to remember is we always want to make sure that the results from the CELF-5 are representative of their functional communication skills. And if there's a mismatch between that, that's where we as clinicians can fill in the gaps as to why that's happened. So, how do we access the Q Global resources? All the resources available for us as speech language therapists require multi-technology and or collaborative assessment using telehealth. Really what this means is that it's manual entry only. So what we're going to do is we're going to access the Q Global stimulus book, or rather the CELF-5 stimulus book through Q Global, and Richard will talk you through blow by blow how to do this. You will then screen share, once you've set up that telehealth environment, the stimulus book. Just as you would as in an in-person assessment, you're capturing the students' responses on a hard paper record form, and then you are either scoring that manually or scoring it through the Q Global scoring and reporting software system. There is a whole, almost 100 assets that are available to us as clinicians for free on Q Global, and they will be free until the 31st of July. For us as speech language therapists, these are the specific speech language assessments that are available. Obviously the CELF-5. The CELF-5 metalinguistics is due out soon, so watch the space. You'll get notification when that's available. Goldman-Pfister, the expressive vocabulary test, the CELF-P2, the Shaywitz dyslexia screen, and the Woodcock reading mastery test. So these are all free, but there's a whole lot of other resources. So I do recommend that you have a little look around that. And I'll hand back to Richard now, and he's going to talk through exactly how you access those resources.
Thanks very much, Angela, and hopefully that was useful for you. Thanks, that was a very thorough review. So I just want to talk a little bit about how you access the Q Global resources that Angela mentioned in her presentation, and how you can sign up for a Q Global account as well. I'm aware some of you joining today may already have a Q Global account, so do bear with me if you do. Hopefully this will still be useful to you. So the first step to access the resources that Angela just mentioned is to sign up for a Q Global account. And this can be done on our website at pearsonclinical.co.uk/Q Global. There's a simple form that you just need to fill in on there with details of your organisation and your email address. And then within 48 hours, you'll receive a welcome email from the platform with details of how to complete the account setup. As part of that welcome email, you'll also have the option to book a 20-minute onboarding slot with one of my team. And during that 20-minute Microsoft Teams session, we will go through how exactly to use the platform and how to access the resources as well. So everything that you'll see briefly on the next few slides is something that would be covered in that 20-minute onboarding session with one of my team as well. So moving on to just talk briefly about how you access the free resources that are now available on Q Global. So when you first log into the Q Global platform, or indeed any time you log into the Q Global platform, you have a range of menu options along the top, and you also have the main body of the information in the middle of the screen. So what I'm going to touch on first here is just the resource library, which is highlighted along the top here. And this is where you access all of the stimulus books and your manuals as well. So first thing to do would be to click on that. When you click on that, it takes you to the section that contains all of the available resources for every available assessment. Now, it's expanded out here to show that the CELF-5 UK And you can see there are two separate folders here. One's called General and one's called Restricted. So I'll just talk about the Restricted folder first of all. Some of you may already have purchased the digital resources for the CELF-5 prior to these COVID times. And if you have, you'll see the view here which shows both the paid for resources, the 4 top ones, but also you will now see the free trial resources as well, labelled free trial on the screen there. Just to stress, there's no difference in the actual content of the resources here. They are exactly the same that you would find in the paid for version as well. It's just to emphasise that these resources marked free trial for CELF and indeed for the majority of assessments on Q Global are now available free until the 31st of July 2020. For those of you that may already see those free trial resources, previous communication was that was available until the 30th of June. So we have just extended that, and you'll receive an email shortly to that effect. Within this restricted folder, as I say, you've got access to the PDFs, and you can simply click on those to bring them up on your screen ready to share via your screen sharing platform. The general section contains some more general information about the assessment, which I'll come on to in a moment. As we mentioned, and I'll just stress again, the resources in this restricted section, they can be viewed on screen, but the platform does not allow them to be downloaded or printed. They are still protected by copyright. And the platform, in fact, doesn't give you the option to print or download them either. So that's just something to bear in mind when you log in here. And finally, it's a question that we get asked quite a lot, and I'm sure it's something that you may have in the back of your minds as to whether, because these are PDF resources, whether you can access them offline. But we do recommend and strongly advise that you stay connected to the internet for the duration of your assessment session. Otherwise, you wouldn't necessarily be able to bring these back if they got lost for any reason. Okay, so moving on just to talk about the free resources a little bit more, particularly those in the general section for the CELF-5. So as I mentioned, anything in the general section can be viewed by anyone with access to Q Global, and specifically on the CELF-5 in here you've got 3 resources, one of which is a brief summary about the CELF-5 in general. And the third one there, I'll just touch on briefly, is just a guide on how to use the digital assets on Q Global. The middle resource there is the verbal stimuli, and on the right hand side there you can see a screenshot of that verbal stimuli, and the stimuli is there to guide you through the assessment session and kind of giving you the instructions on how to introduce the tasks to the students. You can have that on your screen. Or alternatively, that resource can be printed or downloaded. This one in the general folder is not restricted by copyright, so you would be able to print that out or save it to your machine and use it separately as well if you wanted to and found that easier. And as noted there, just on those bullet points, that's just what I've just covered. Just an example here on screen of what happens when you open up the resources. So this is an example of the front page of the digital STIM book from the CELF-5 UK. When you open up the PDF resource, it looks exactly the same as it does in paper. You can, with the added bonus that you can click through the resources using the arrow. So on the right hand side there, underneath the header digital STIM book, you can see there's an arrow. When you click on that arrow, it takes you through to the following page of the book, so you don't have to go backwards and forwards like you do maybe with paper to get to the right section. When you get to that contents page, which is the following page, again you've got the list of subtests here. Again, to make things simple, you can either click on these directly from this page to take you directly to that subtest. So for example, if I wanted to go straight to formulated sentences, I could just click on that here and it would take me to that section of the stimulus book ready to start. As noted before, you've also got the arrows here, so you can either go back clicking the left-hand arrow, or forward, clicking the right-hand arrow. And in the middle of the screen, you've got the home button, and at any time that will bring you back to this screen, the home screen, so you can reset yourself ready to continue with the next subtest if you want to go through it that way. This is just an example, a demo item from one of the subtests. And again, you can see just what that looks like on the screen. And you can also see that those arrows and the home button are visible from this page as well. So your route through the assessment is very much clicking these forward and backward arrows through to the relevant items within the subtest. Or again, you can click on the home screen to take you back to that contents page. And that's just an example of the examiner's manual as well. So now I'm going to hand back to Angela, who can talk through a little bit more about how to set up the assessments in this setting. And then I will come back in about 2 or 3 slides time to talk through live on screen how you go through scoring using Q Global. Angela, over to you. Angela, I think you're muted.
I think I'm back.
Yes, you are.
I just want to check. Oh, keep going. There we go. Thank you, Richard. So in summary, what we want to do is set up our telehealth environment, remembering our 5 factors, consider the audiovisual environment, consider our examiner, so that's us as clinicians, our students' factors, what test materials we're going to need, and any other factors we need to take into account. And as Richard shared, we need to log into our Q Global account in the first instance, so you have to be connected to the internet. That's really important. You then access your CELF-5 Q Global stimulus book, screen share this with a student, and that's really important, folks. Remember I said this is manual entry, so it's really important that we're able to screen share with the assessment with a student. So what that means is you open it up on your computer, and whatever platform you're using has the functionality to share and display on the student's home computer, or the student's computer in their home, or wherever they are set up. Okay, hopefully at home. And then you proceed with the assessment as per standardised procedures. So what you're doing is you're actually reading either from the examiner's book, and on one of the slides, let me see if, oh no, I won't go back to the slides because it's too many slides back. But as Richard was talking through how to access the Q Global resources, there's a general folder. And there you've got your CELF-5, or your CELF-5 rather, verbal stimuli. If you just simply download that document, it's a 16-page document with all the verbal instructions that you need to administer the CELF-5. So that saves you from lugging around the big examiner's manual. And then you're capturing the student's response using the hard paper record form. And for those of us in the audience who are Q Interactive users, you can capture their response on the practitioner device. If you want more information about that, just reach out to Richard and I on how to set that up. And with scoring, you can either hand score or use Q Global, and Richard will talk more about that in a moment. For our Q Interactive users, you don't need any other paper record forms or to access Q Global. If you set it up correctly, you capture the student's response as you would if they were sitting opposite you in a room, and then you'll automatically generate the report. So how do we capture the responses? Most telehealth platforms allows you to give control over to the mouse, just like, give over control of the mouse to the student, just like Richard and I are doing here. So he's in a different room, I'm in a different room, and we're sharing control of the mouse. So that's important that you make sure whatever platform you use has that functionality. So Richard and I are presenting in something called Microsoft Teams. So that works really well. I've used Microsoft Teams to assess as well. So there is an ability to share. There is also an ability to annotate. And what that means is you can get the student to actually point on the actual screen and a little highlighted section will come up. So that's really important. But what happens if they've got to point to things at the same time, or you first point to something before you do something? So that's where it's really useful to have something set up using an additional camera. And that's really simple. You use the parent's mobile phone or cell phone to set up that additional camera. And our colleagues have, and that comes up in the next slide, our colleagues in the US have put together something called Deep Dive Third Camera Hack. What I recommend you do is hop onto YouTube and literally Google, sorry, not Google, put in the search terms Deep Dive Third Camera Hack Ideas. Or Richard and I have shared this information on our LinkedIn profiles as well. Great little video, really useful. I watched it like several times and I keep getting more and more insight into how to set it up. It goes for about 8 minutes, but it really is useful information. What that does is it helps mimic that in-person environment. Why? Because if you're sitting with someone face-to-face, I know telehealth is face-to-face, that's why I keep saying in-person. If you're sitting with someone in the clinic physically in person, you as a clinician have 100% visibility of what they're doing, what they're not doing, where they're pointing, right? And this is why I like the idea of the third camera, because you then have 100% visibility of what their student's doing. And you're also capturing the additional observations, like are they fidgeting, are they keep looking out the room, you know, just all that additional stuff that we find invaluable as clinicians in addition to the standardised results. So I personally would recommend that if you can and where you can, do set up that third camera. And recording responses, I said that in the summary before, hide paper record forms, queue interactive users, set up your student as per normal, and then you're capturing the responses on the practitioner device. This is an example, it's a bit teeny tiny there, sorry, but what it's doing is it's showing you via that third camera that you can actually have visibility of what that student's pointing to. Resuming our face-to-face or in-person assessments, remember we have to be mindful of social distancing rules. Social distancing is certainly a new term that is now in our vernacular during these times, and disinfecting tests. So again, on the Pearson US website, and I think there's a link on the UK website as well, a whole list of disinfecting test materials, tips and tricks for doing that. And again, Richard and I have shared this information on our LinkedIn profiles. The one thing I'd say is don't bring any liquids anywhere near your hard paper record, your hard copy of your test. No liquids, no wet wipes, no wiping anything down, please. But there is a whole list of what we recommend is nice and safe to do. So everyone stays nice and safe, but also you protect the integrity and the longevity of those very expensive hard paper kits. So do try and find that. Again, Tam will make those available on the website, but don't spend too much time hunting for things. Just flick us an email and we can send those to you. What if an assessment isn't available on Q Global? Now, Pearson's clinical no objection letter is available on our website, and I, in a nutshell, summarised the do's and don'ts for you. Essentially, screen share our Q Global resources, you know, readily in that telehealth environment within that clinical setting. Don't photocopy our record forms, our response booklets, and where something isn't available on Q Global, it doesn't mean that you can photocopy it. I'm thinking of an example such as the communication children's checklist, the CCC2. I've got lots of questions about that. It's very popular in our world, especially when we're working with our children on the spectrum. It's a really popular test. It isn't available on Q Global. It's only paper. So what we recommend is that you do post that to the family, and then once they have that, you can go through those questions with them as you would in an in-person assessment. I'll hand back to Richard, who's going to take us through the Q Global platform in a little bit more detail, with specifically around the scoring and reporting.
Thanks very much, Angela. So yes, I just want to now touch on what you do with all of the data you've gathered when you're assessing, either using the Q Global method or in the face-to-face using social distancing. Q Global has within it a scoring and reporting engine to allow you to generate reports based on your data that you can then save out in a Word document format. To generate those reports, there is a charge associated with that, and the charge is showing on the screen there. So just to give you that up front really before we start going into how to do that. So there are two options for scoring and reporting. One is to pay per client report, and the cost per client is £1.05 plus VAT in the UK. That will allow you to score the data entered for one client. You're allowed to regenerate the report for that same client multiple times if you need to without it using any more credits, just so long as you don't edit that data at all. The other option is to purchase an annual unlimited use scoring subscription. That costs £32 plus VAT per year. And within that, you are able to score, as it says, an unlimited number there of CELF-5 assessments for that £32 a year. We've recently introduced tiered discounting on the pay-as-you-go credits, the £1.05p credits. So if you buy in bulk, those do now reduce in price. The more you buy, the cheaper it becomes effectively. When we send out the handouts later, there is a link on that slide to the table, which contains the bulk pricing discounts for the CELF and other assessments as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to switch over sharing my screen to the Q Global platform. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to generate the Q Global reports by entering the data in from the record form that you've completed or that has been completed in conjunction with the client. So the first step is to log into Q Global. When you've logged into Q Global, the first thing we're going to need to do is create your examinee or client within the platform. So I'm going to do that now live on screen. So I'll just click on New Examinee here at the top, and I'll enter in their name and a gender, and I'll enter the date of birth as well. It's important the date of birth is correct. All of the scoring and reporting that's calculated goes against the date that's entered here. You can amend it later, but obviously if you know it and you've got it right, it's best to get it right here first up. As you can see, it's limited data you need to enter here. That's essentially everything you need to create your examinee. So I'll enter that and click on Save. And now my client is in this table here of all of my clients ready to start entering data. So what I can do now is click on their name, and I can see I can now assign them a new assessment. So I'll click on that, and I'm going to find my CELF, choose the CELF-5 UK, and click on Assign. And then we get taken to a final loading screen, final kind of setup screen, if you like, which contains the demographic information we entered. This is where you could potentially change the date of birth as well if you need to. You can then input the administration date here, so I'll just leave that as today's date. But you could, for example, set this up a week or even 2 or 3 weeks in advance of the session, save this file ready to go, and then come back to it to enter your data later. That is possible within the platform. If you've got some time to kind of do some admin tasks of setting up assessments, I'm sure that would be something you could definitely consider. The final step there is to input the examiner. So that would be yourself. When you created with a Q Global account, you can tick to make yourself an examiner. And should you do that, you'll be able to put your name in the list here. and I believe that also comes out then on the report when you generate it. And I'll show you a sample report at the end of this section of the webinar. So I've created the session, I've input myself as the examiner, and now I'm ready to input some extra demographics that are specific to the CELF assessment. So I can now choose the school year. So this child would be in year 6. I only know that because it's the age of my daughter, so it's a good one to remember. I can put in their school and university, the handedness, etc. in these boxes, and then I can click on the additional information and also choose to input any of these items from the drop-down menus. They are optional, and you don't have to fill these in, but obviously the more information you enter, the more that's shown on the report. The final step, and the largest step, if you like, is the Scores tab. So when I click on the Scores tab, I will have my record form in front of me where I've got my raw data, and I can start to input that into the platform to allow me to then generate my automated report. So you have two options here. You can either input the total subtest raw score, just the top level raw score if you like, and just click in there and type it in. Or alternatively, for extra information on the report and more detailed analysis, you can enter each individual item raw score as well. So just by typing in the boxes the score from the record form would allow you to then get that extra level of detail in your report. Obviously, I won't go through every single item and every single subtest here, but you can see how you would then enter the data from that into the record form. And you can expand all of these one by one, and you can see for word classes here, you can see the items, and then you can also input the score as we did for sentence comp as well. Once you've entered all of your data from the record form into this section here, you would go to save or save and close. Once you've done that, provided you've entered all of the relevant data for your assessment, you would then have the option to generate a report on that data. You note that option isn't available at the moment because I haven't entered all of the data. That option only becomes available once the report is ready to be generated, i.e. all of your data has been entered. So what I'll do is go back to the home screen, and then I'll show you what a completed assessment looks like and how you generate that report. So now I'm back home. You can see along the top here I've got my reporting tab, which I'll click on, and I can now find my record and generate my report. So the quickest and easiest way to do this is to click on the Advanced Examinee search here. And if I scroll down here, you can see there are lots of options. You can search by name, email address, etc. What I want to do though is find the CELF-5 specifically. So I'll scroll down, click on the CELF-5 UK. So this is going to show me at the moment every record that's the CELF-5 UK. And I want to click on status. Normally that would say ready for reporting, and that would indicate I've entered all of my data and it would bring up all of my assessments in that state. I'm going to click on report generated here so I can bring you up one I've already done. So click on search, and now it's brought me up 2 records, and both of these are clients that have a CELF-5 assessment with the status of report generated. So I'll just click on those, and you can see here's my CELF assessment. And showing me that the report's already been generated, but I'm going to go into configure it again just to show you the options. When you go to configuring the report, it will bring you up 2 options. It will either allow you to configure the score report, which is the standard report, and the prices that I showed you earlier are for the score report. You will also potentially have the option for a progress report, and I'll let Angela touch on the progress report at the end, or feel free to ask more about the progress report by emailing us as well if you're interested in that. I'm going to click on the score report here now, and it brings me up here a configuration screen which I can use to kind of generate and select the outputs for my report. So on the left hand side here, you can see tick boxes, and it will allow you to untick or tick these options, and you can customize what you want in your report essentially. If you choose everything, obviously all of that will be included. On the right hand side, you've got some additional settings relating to confidence intervals, critical values and levels of significance as well. Along the top, it shows me I've got 6 credits in my inventory. That's the £1.5p credits available, so I've got 6 of those. Because I've already generated this report, I don't need any inventory, so it's showing 0 here. If this was a brand new report, it would show 1 there, and it would be using 1 of my 6 effectively. And also it allows me to configure the report as either a PDF or as a Word document. By generating it as a Word document, it makes it simpler and easier for you to cut aspects of the report out and input those into your own templates. Obviously, you can use the report as it comes as well if you want to, but aware that most people have their own templates that they cut and paste the tables and graphs into, so you can definitely do that. Final step is to click on Generate Report there, and what that will do after giving any specific warnings is download the report to your machine. And you can see here I'm using Chrome, so the report comes up and I can simply open it in my screen, and you can then configure that as you want to. I'm just going to show you what the report looks like, so if you just bear with me a second. So this is an example of the completed report in Word format, and you can see everything is in here, tables and graphs. There is a sample report on our website on the CELF-5 page that you can definitely view and take a look at as well. I'll maybe ask Angela to highlight any specific kind of useful parts of this report as well.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. If you could just scroll down, because I haven't got control at the moment, but I'll leave the control in your hands. As Richard said, there is a sample report on the website. Keep going down, please, Rich. But what I'd like to, we don't have time to go into the detail now, but this is where you can reach out to us for detail, right down to the item analysis. There we go, thank you. What I've realised talking to the clinicians and talking to a lot of you, especially during these times, is a lot of us didn't realise that part of that part of the report is that item analysis. Now, Richard showed you where you could input the total raw score, or you can expand it in Q Global and enter the actual item score. And that's where I recommend that you do it takes an extra 5 to 7 minutes depending on the child, and yes, I have timed it. And it's just worth that extra time, because this is what you get. So you get your item analysis and you can see the category, the correct item, which is that second column, and then the incorrect items, and then of course the items not administered, and those will be where the discontinual happened. But what is interesting for us as clinicians is to look at the incorrect items, because from there you can tend to see any themes or trends that are occurring. So with this little person, you can see most items where they required a synonym was incorrect. So that tells us that potentially that's something that we can target and work on. Rich, if you just scroll down a little bit further, please. So you can see we get an item analysis for each and every subtest. So I absolutely love it, because from there it forms the basis or the framework for your intervention plan. And what is really useful is really targeted, because as I always say to the clinicians, like, if the child's not making progress within a few weeks, we haven't targeted our programming specifically enough, or something else is going on, right? But really, if it's targeted and we've done our assessment, accurately and we've gathered all the necessary information, we're providing the therapy, we should see progress in some way, shape or form quite quickly, right? All right, enough about that. But if anybody's got more specific questions, I'm happy to talk to you about that. But we're right on time, so we might, I'll hand back to you, Rich.
Yep.
And then we might just go over, 5 or 7 minutes just to take any questions, any burning questions.
Absolutely. So let me, let me just finish off on these slides very quickly. If you are interested in any further webinars, or in fact the recording of this webinar, which will be available in the next couple of weeks, we hope, please do visit our website, pearsonclinical.co.uk/webinars, where there's information on upcoming events as well. And just some places to go for information, as Anja's said through this presentation, and myself as well. Do feel free to reach out to us at any point should you have any questions about the CELF or indeed any other assessment as well. We'll be more than happy to talk to you. Just to re-emphasise where to go to sign up for a Q Global account, it's the pearsonclinical.co.uk/Q Global site. And also just to highlight our self-help portal as well. We have a number of articles specifically relating to Q Global on there, guides on how to do various activities. So do feel free to go to that to find out further information as well. Like you said, and I'm conscious of the time, we've run over slightly. And for those of you that don't know, Angela's actually based in Australia, and she's joining us live at the moment from Australia. So huge thanks to you, Angela, for doing that. I hope it's not too late over there. But it has come now to the time where we can take your questions and answer those live. So I'm just going to have a look at the questions that we've received. So the first question is, does the online conclusion re-permission for using the CELF-5 for telepractice only relate to the aforementioned subtests or all? So if that's the report, I think maybe you're touching on the report there. The report is completely yours once it's been generated, so no matter which subtests you have administered, you would be able to use those and cut those out into your own templates. It's not related to the 4. Angela, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that one, if I've maybe misunderstood it.
I'm understood, do we only have access to certain subtests online? And if we've misunderstood, just let us know. But no is the short answer. So you have access to the entire CELF-5 stimulus book through Q Global. It comes as one book, so per se. I mean, it's a soft copy. So you have access to Stimulus Book 1, Stimulus Book 2, all in the one. And then, as Richard said, if you're generating the report, you get all the information. We were just showing you some examples, but you input all the information for every single subtest that you've done. And as I said, I recommend you do it at item level. And then you get the entire report. It calculates your core language score, all the composite scores, subtest scores, as well as your confidence intervals, your percentile ranks, your percentile rank intervals. So do take a moment to have a look at that sample report. It's invaluable. That was my understanding of the question, but
thanks.
Let us know if it's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Do let us know. So the next question is, can I double check you're able to record your assessment session with your client when using a Pearson assessment?
Mm-hmm. Can I answer that, Richard?
Yeah, go on, Anne, you go. Go for it.
You're not allowed to, under the Copyright Act, record any information where any Pearson product is broadcast. So do have a look at the no objection letter. It strictly says you're not allowed to record any session. So from a copyright perspective, it's obvious. Why? Because we don't know who's going to act. By we I mean Pearson, doesn't know who's going to access this data. But also by we, I mean us as clinicians, like who has access to the data? We don't want parents, as I alluded to earlier, sitting with raw data and video footage of their child taking an assessment. Again, been there, done that, made that mistake. It's not worth it. Because parents will ad nauseum go through it and they'll ask their child why they did this, and then they'll start teaching to the test. So no. So first and foremost, Pearson copyright doesn't allow us to record any sessions. And as a clinician, I just would advise against it. What you are allowed to do, though, is remember in the CELF-5, we've got the formulated sentences. That's really tricky to score right there and then and to capture the student's response. The other thing I'd say about that is, and you would have experienced this, the longer you take to write, the more the student wants to talk because they think that you're writing what they're saying, but it's just because we can't write as fast as they're talking. So those sentences I would recommend you audio record on your smartphone, but capture as much as you can live. And the other one is recording sentences. Again, they rattle that off so quickly, and we want to just go back and double check that we've captured their responses, because as clinicians we tend to self-correct for our kids, right? So those are the only times I would recommend you record the responses, but that's audio only.
Okay, thanks, Ange. I think the next question is on a similar theme, actually, and I think we've probably covered it, but it was, my school has asked that I record all sessions in the home. Does that mean that I cannot do the CELF assessment, as you've said no to record? Recordings are only accessible by me, encrypted and deleted after 12 months. But I believe the same rules would apply, as you've just outlined, to the previous question, Ange, for that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really is strict, but do go double check the no objection letter. I'll do that as well, but I did double check all that information. It is really strict. We can't allow sessions to be recorded, again, because it means that the actual assessment data is out there, and we really need to protect the integrity of the test, because we don't want anyone, so non-clinicians, to access that data. Yeah,
thanks very much on that one. So I'll take the next one. The question is, do you know when the CELF metalinguistics will become available, and will it be free to access on Q Global? So the short answer is, we hope it will be available within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We haven't got an exact date yet. But we are working to get those resources onto the resource library, so the stimulus book and manuals, as soon as we can. Those resources, as they're added, will be in line with the other resources for CELF and other assessments, in that they'll be free to access until the 31st of July. And also in line with the other CELF resources, the reporting would be charged for. And we're just in the process of getting that ready, so we don't unfortunately have prices quite ready for that, I'm afraid, at the moment. The next question is, I should say, sorry, do check our website or drop me an email, and we'll be happy to let you know when it's been added, as soon as it's been added on that one. The next question is, I already have an account with Q Interactive. Can I access Q Global as well? So yes, absolutely. Q Global is free to access for anybody. The resources, as I've shown, are available in the resource library section there. With a Q Interactive customer, the consideration would be when you want to switch back to using Q Interactive, I guess, and how maybe going back to a face-to-face assessment world might lend itself better to Q Interactive. Or potentially you can use Q Interactive via a remote screen sharing session as well. And as Ange touched on earlier, you would still then get the benefit of the automated scoring reporting using Q Interactive, using the practitioner iPad, for those of you that are familiar with Q Interactive. There are some additional considerations on how to do that. It's something that we know is technically possible, but if you're a tech savvy person, then obviously it would be something you could consider. Otherwise, Q Global is a great resource too. Andrew, I don't know if you've got anything else to add there.
Yes, can I just add, because I understood the question to be, as a Q Interactive user, do you need a separate account for to access Q Global? So the answer to that is yes. So you do need to flick Richard an email requesting that account access, and they'll set that up for you via, within 24 hours, or click the link. And what Richard is talking about is it is possible to set up a telehealth environment using your Q Interactive license, but I would highly recommend against that, because you do have to be tech savvy, and I, as a clinician, am not as tech savvy as my tech savvy colleagues who only work in IT. I have tried, I have fiddled, I was determined to get this to work for us clinicians during this time. It is tricky. It is really tricky, and to be honest, I don't think it's worth the effort. So, as Richard said, as a Q Interactive user, also set up your Q Global account, access those resources. It's much easier to set up that telehealth environment.
Absolutely.
When I was talking about our Q Interactive users capturing the responses, that's different, okay? And we don't have time to go into that now, but for our Q Interactive users who want to capture responses, that's where reach out to us and we'll talk about that. But it's not, I would recommend not setting up your telehealth environment, only using your Q Interactive account. Hope that's clear. Yeah.
Thanks, Ange. Yep, I think it definitely makes sense. It's a lot easier using Q Global. You don't have to manage additional technological factors when you're assessing, basically. Are we okay for time, Ange? I don't know.
I think one more question. Because folks, we will, if your question hasn't been answered, don't worry, we'll capture the questions, and Richard and I will put together an FAQ document, and we'll make sure that we circulate that. But if you do have a burning question, just send it to us via email.
Absolutely.
And we'll get onto it. But we've got time for one more question, if everyone's okay to hang on. I'm fine to go one more question. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Ange. So the next question in received was, how do you create multiple users from one Q Global account? Does the assessment work okay through NHS telehealth systems? And if you're not able to allow remote access to clients, are you not able to complete the CELF-5 online? So the short answer to point one is yes, you can create multiple users on one Q Global account. I'm taking that to mean within an NHS team, for example. So if you're an NHS Trust speech team, you would create the account under the banner of the NHS, and under that account you would then have multiple logins for each of your speeches, and you would all use your own logins to log in and access those resources separately. So that's the way Q Global is intended to work, and it's perfectly possible to have multiple users on the one account. In fact, it's the way the platform was set up to work. Does the assessment work okay through NHS telehealth systems was the next point on that question. Would you be I guess there's probably two answers there. One is if it's set up to work through an internal NHS system, then the resource can't be shared on any other system. It has to be hosted on Q Global. So you'd be using your teleconferencing platform to share your screen of Q Global. At the moment, it doesn't link out the resource to another platform to share your screen with. If you're talking about it working through an NHS network, then we have had experience of it working through the NHS, and I don't think it's a web-based platform, Q Global. It's standardised. It's a standard web-based platform, and you shouldn't have too many issues allowing it to work on an NHS network. And Ange, I'd probably ask you to answer the last point of that question, which was, if you're not able to allow remote access to clients, are you not able to complete the CELF-5 online?
I took that to mean if you can't screen share. So yeah, if you can't screen share your screen with someone in their home environment or clinic environment, they can't see the actual stimulus items. But again, if we've misinterpreted the question, just let us know.
Yeah, drop either of us or both of us an email or a message on LinkedIn or whichever, and we can get back to you on that. That's absolutely fine. I think I'm conscious of the time. We've overrun by 15 minutes, and Andrew, I hope it's not midnight or something like that where you are.
No, it's not.
Again, a big thank you to everyone for joining us today for this webinar, and especially to Ange for doing it in the evening there. I do hope it's been useful for you, and I do apologise that we haven't been able to answer all your questions, but do feel free to contact us on our email addresses or via social media, and we'll be more than happy to follow those up with you in the coming days. Ange, did you want to say anything else?
No, just thank you. You can see on the screen, I've got one of my favourite sayings here at Pearson is I love myself. It keeps me really busy, and I hope you continue to love your CELF. So thank you, and remember folks, stay well, stay safe, and look forward to your questions, and thank you for all your support.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.